Thanks again for being here for this important webinar that we're doing with our partners. I'm Brooke Lovelace with the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council, and we're happy to have you here this evening for an hour and a half. Hopefully we'll be able to get through all of our presenters in that time and have time for questions. I do want to just share our agenda for the day. If I can get my slide up here. I'm not going to take too much of your time here. We do have a packed agenda, so I'm doing the welcome. That's what this is. Again, thanks for joining us. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Do try to keep your keep the mute on if you're not speaking or asking questions, so we can be sure to hear the speakers. We should have hopefully got the interpreter spotlighted so you can see them. There is closed captioning available. You should see it on the bottom. If not, you might have to click those three little dots that say more to get that to come up. We do have the chat feature shut off. We'll only be using the question and answer feature for today. And we're going to be, if we don't get to end all of those questions, we're going to go ahead and capture all of those questions and get back to you with those, with the recording when we get a chance. So go ahead and enter your questions into that feature. So we're going to start off with the Department of Education team and Ask Resource Center. That's going to be about 20 minutes. Then we're going to break and do open up for a couple of questions for 10 minutes. We probably won't have a lot of time for a lot of questions, but maybe just a couple of questions right then. Then we're going to go to Health and Human Services and have Zach speak with us. Then Disability Rights Iowa. And then we're going to have our council member, our family advocate, give her perspective of how she advocates for her daughter in the school system. And then if there's any time, we'll do some questions. So that's our agenda for today. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Barb Guy, who is the Division Administrator for Special Education, and I'm going to let her introduce her great team that she has with us today joining us. Barb, go ahead and take it over.
Great, thank you, Brooke. I think we still have one team member who might be, Thomas Mays, I think is out there and could join us if possible. So thank you and welcome everybody. We appreciate you spending the next hour and a half with us on what's a rainy night. As Brooke mentioned, I'm Barb Guy. I am the Division Administrator in the State Accountability and Student Support branch of our newly revised or reestablished Division of Special Education. I have served and continue to serve as the State Director of Special Education. And with me today, the acting director of the regional part of the new division is Angelisa. Angelisa, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Angelisa Feinart, Regional Special Ed Director for Great Prairie and the acting division administrator for Special Education Regional Continuous Improvement and Compliance.
And Rachel, if you'll introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Bosovich. I am in the Attorney 2 position with the department, and my role is now housed in the Special Education Division.
Angelisa, Rachel, and I will be going briefly over some of the activities that the department is doing, and you'll see from the title here, we're going to be talking about supports that are provided from Iowa under IDEA implementation for families, what we do at the department, but we also have Ask Resource, Karen Thompson, who will be joining us to talk because we have a contract service with them now, and I think she'll be talking about Ask Resources in general, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions and get you connected to as many supports as we possibly can. And I believe Thomas Mays will be joining us as possible. So I know he's here, so he might be joining through chat. But so Rachel, we'll go ahead and get started. Rachel is driving the slide deck for us, which is great. Today, we're going to try in our 20 minutes before questions to give a really speed overview. If you have not seen anything around our reestablished Division of Special Education, it has grown immensely. We used to be a team of around 25 people at the Department for Special Education when we were fully staffed, and when we are fully staffed, we will be close to 100 for those who are in the Des Moines area, as well as those who are out across the state. And then I'll give you a very, very quick dip into what general supervision means in Iowa and what we at the department do around general supervisions, with a highlight of one of our activities that is a call response or call cadre. And then Rachel will talk about IDEA dispute resolution options, and we'll close with Karen talking about the resources at Ask. So I think with that, I turn it over to you, Angelisa.
Thank you, Barb. So as we said, the Division of Special Education has been reestablished to really continue to build upon Iowa's special education system through accountability, compliance, continuous improvement, and student supports. And I really am the division administrator for that external branch, or the group of staff members that are located out in districts, in the regions, in the AEAs. And so we're really very focused on implementation. So how can we help support implementation in the field? That group of staff members includes the regional special education directors and consultants for continuous improvement. And our work is really focused on activities like implementing supports for data analysis and continuous improvement work in districts and AEAs, in the area of special education, supporting compliance and general supervision work. And I know Barb's going to talk a little bit more about that as far as general supervision goes, supporting the accreditation process, and making sure we're using evidence-based practices and high-quality professional learning opportunities when we're talking to staff members. And so we're really focused on how we can improve special education from the implementation lens out in the field. And as I said, we are externally based. So Rachel, if you want to advance us, I actually have a list of the different regional special education directors. So this is the list of AEAs, and each person, they're assigned regional special education director. And it is actually live linked to the department's webpage that has a little more information about the special education regional continuous improvement and compliance team and the contact information for these regional special education directors. And Barb, I'll turn it back over to you to talk about your branch.
Great. So on the slide that, oops, sorry. There. On the slide that Angelisa showed you with just the two rows, this is the second row, state accountability and student supports, and then underneath it said bureau chiefs. What we have in this part of the division that's really all located in the Des Moines office, our focus is on statewide supports, and we work very, very closely, obviously, with the regionals and also the AEA special ed administrators. We have 3 bureaus in this new organization. 2 of those bureaus are the bureaus we had before. The Bureau Chief of Early Access and Early Childhood, that's Kimberly Velati. So that has our early access, our birth to 5 services are located in that bureau. The Bureau Chief of Student Instruction Evaluation and Services is a new name for the Bureau, but that is the position that I formerly held as a Bureau Chief. And then a new Bureau and a Bureau Chief is the Bureau Chief of Special Education Accountability, Accreditation, Finance, and Data Analysis. I did hear somebody once say we need names with a few less commas. So I think that would be a wise next step for us. What we are working on, or if anybody has participated in some of our dispute resolutions, state complaints, that is really housed and run out of this part of the division. We also are statewide initiatives of anything that might need professional learning. If you've participated or you know of districts that are working on the SDI, especially designed instruction around secondary transition or early literacy, the Achieve system, the soon to be launched family portal, all of that comes out of this part of our activities. And so with that, I'm going to move in and talk a little bit about general supervision. General supervision is a concept within the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, and in Iowa, we talk about general supervision as really 5 duties. the duty to inform, the duty to prevent, the duty to detect, the duty to inspect, and the duty to correct. And you can see from the visual that we have on the slide here that it's not a linear process. It is something that is it's an infinity loop because it all connects together. As we maybe notice something that's going on, we decide that there might be an issue in one spot. We may want to inform the state, for example, that the proper way to write something or to work on systems. I think the other thing that's really important, and that's the first bullet here, is general supervision is everyone's responsibility. Although it's given to the state as a responsibility for monitoring, it's also a responsibility for families, for classroom teachers, but the content of what we need for general supervision changes depending on what we call sometimes the educational cascade or where you're at. So a teacher's duty to inform or prevent or to notice something that's going on and correct it is different than, say, my responsibility at the state level. And so at the state level, I've listed here, and this in itself would be at least another hour's presentation. So I won't go into talking about all of the things that are listed on this slide around the components or activities that we use to address these 5 duties of general supervision. Rachel will go a little bit more into some of the dispute resolution. But I wanted you to know that this is a broad package of activities we're taking on at the state level. And one piece of those components, Rachel, if you go to the next slide, is our call cadre. And some of you I know probably are very familiar with it and have called us quite frequently. Others of you, this might be new. It is available to anybody who has a question around special education, whether you're a family member or work in a district, if you're an AEA or somebody in the general public who has a question, or if you're an advocate. We have staff who sign up every day. And by every day, those would be when the department has a work day and during work hours for the department. So for example, on Monday, it was a state holiday, so nobody was manning the phones. But if you contact us either by phone or by email, there will be a response from somebody on the call cadre within 24 hours. The role of that individual is to listen, identify, discuss what the issues might be, answer any procedural questions, provide any relevant resources that are available. I think it's important, and I want you to know that the conversation will be confidential, but it is not anonymous. If the department hears something that we suspect there might be non-compliance, we must meet our regulatory obligations to continue to identify whether non-compliance exists. The call number is here. It's just the general department, the general department number. If you call that number, you can request to talk to the special ed call cadre member, or simply state you have a special ed question, or if you know of somebody specific in the directory who is dealing with special education, you can send them an email and they'll forward it on to whoever is on call that day. And so that's just a broad overview of general supervision, some of the things we're doing at the department. And now I think, Rachel, you're going to talk more about dispute resolution options.
Thanks, Barb. So the IDEA provides 3 dispute resolution options: mediation, state complaint, and due process. I'm going to walk through each of these, starting with mediation. Mediation is available to parents and public agencies involved in a dispute regarding any matter under the IDEA. This is a voluntary process, meaning there is no requirement for either party to participate, and at any point, they can change their mind. So if they have already agreed, either party, to participate and no longer would like to, they are free to do so. So that voluntary component maintains. It is also a confidential process. So any information shared during the mediation, the discussions that are held, including settlement proposals. Those are confidential discussions and cannot be presented in court later as evidence. When the department receives a request for mediation and both parties have agreed, then we assign what we call a state mediator. A state mediator is an individual who is impartial and has met certain requirements. So this person has an in-depth and strong understanding of special education law and issues, and has gone through training on effective mediation techniques. That state mediator will then facilitate the discussions that occur during mediation. The goal of mediation is for the parties to find a mutually agreeable resolution and to execute this resolution through the use of a legally binding agreement. A legally binding agreement is written and will detail the terms of that agreement, and then the parties will sign. This is then enforceable in court as well as through our state complaint process. Some benefits of the mediation process. This is our most informal of the three, and it can be much less time consuming or emotionally exhausting. This is because mediation really lasts for a day. This could be just a couple hours, or this could be, morning until evening, but it really occurs within one day. You'll see as we look at the other options, those are week-long processes. So this is can be much less taxing on the participants. I think probably the biggest benefit here is really the parties being able to have control over the resolution. They really relinquish this when we get into state complaint and due process. So no one knows what's going to work best for the family or knows as well as the family does, right? And so this allows them to really craft the resolution and agreement to that individual need and what is going to work best for them. This really allows creative solutions as well, solutions that the department would not have authority to issue in a corrective action through a state complaint, say, or an administrative law judge wouldn't have the authority to order. So this can be very powerful and very beneficial for the parties. Also supporting positive relationships. Because this is a mutually agreeable solution, parties tend to walk away feeling a little bit better. It is a positive thing that they've found a common ground, and that can be extremely important, especially because we know that these relationships have to last years, right, as the child progresses through school. State complaint. A state complaint is also frequently referred to as a formal written complaint. This is a signed written statement that a public agency has violated a requirement of the IDEA. Again, this is any requirement under the IDEA, so it's very broad. And in terms of the parties to a state complaint, anyone can file a state complaint. Any individual or any organization. This is not limited to parents or just the public agencies that can file a state complaint. There is a 1-year statute of limitations in state complaints, so the violation or the alleged violation has to have occurred within a year of filing. When we receive a state complaint investigator is assigned to the matter. The investigator does just that. They investigate. They look into the allegations, the facts, they pull the records. This could be IEPs, prior written notices, this could be emails, recordings, a whole host of things can be considered. And then the state complaint investigator will then write and issue a written decision. This decision will include findings of fact. It will include the applicable law and then explain how that law applies to those facts and come to a conclusion as to whether a violation has occurred or has not occurred. If the investigator finds that a violation has occurred, corrective action will be included in that written decision that is issued. Some benefits of the state complaint process, starting with remedies. So with corrective action that we include in findings of violations, because the department has our general supervision, authority and obligation, the remedies available to us are very broad. Additionally, through the state complaint process, the department is tasked with not only remedying and addressing the individual case of noncompliance, but considering the needs of future children that are similarly situated and how we can prevent that from occurring in the future. So the remedies that can be ordered and included in corrective action can be very robust. Written findings. Sometimes this is important for people to just have that written finding of these are the facts. This is what was found, and yes, a violation occurred, or no, a violation did not occur. This can be powerful for people to feel just validated and heard, and allow them to kind of process that and continue to move forward. And I would say this last one, that it is less intimidating than a due process. Yes, it is more formal than a mediation, but less intimidating than a due process. And so I'll switch to due process now. So a due process complaint, also frequently referred to as a request for due process hearing. This is because a due process complaint is a request for a hearing. And this can be on any matter relating to the identification, evaluation, or educational placement of a child with a disability, or a provision of FAPE to the child. So this is more narrow than a state complaint, where it can be regarding any matter under IDEA. Again, more narrow here, due process is only available to parents or public agencies. So it is not as broad as a state complaint. However, there is a 2-year statute of limitations for due process complaints in comparison to the 1 year for a state complaint. There is resolution meeting requirements. So anytime a due process complaint is filed, the parties are required to participate in a resolution meeting. A resolution meeting has a lot of similarities with mediation, namely that it is that purpose, again, is to bring the parties together and see if they can find a mutually agreeable resolution before proceeding to a hearing. However, a state mediator would not participate in a resolution meeting. And again, it is required, unlike mediation, which is voluntary. So if a resolution meeting is successful and the parties find an agreement, they will issue a legally binding agreement just the same way that they would in mediation. If the resolution meeting is unsuccessful, they will proceed to a formal hearing. And this formal hearing is really conducted in the same way that we think of traditional court proceedings, right? So there is a court reporter, testimony will be given, evidence will be submitted, the parties will present, each side will present their arguments, and an administrative law judge will preside over this hearing. The administrative law judge will then issue a written decision and will put into that decision the same things that would be provided in a state complaint decision. So findings of fact, application of law, and then a conclusion as to whether or not a violation has occurred. And if a violation is found, then the written decision will include corrective action. Some benefits here of the due process complaint. I know at first some people may say that the resolution meeting requirements might sound more like a con than maybe a pro, but I included it here for one pretty significant reason. So the resolution meeting requirements, as I said, you could end up drafting, if you come to an agreement, you have a legally binding agreement. However, there's a unique twist here with resolution meetings. If a legally binding agreement is signed and by the parties will actually have 3 business days following execution of that legally binding agreement to void. And I think this is really powerful and important for families. If they walk out and they're feeling just uncomfortable with the terms, or kind of feeling that regret, I shouldn't have agreed to that, we shouldn't have settled on that. This really gives them that time period to just process. And so they would have 3 business days to void the agreement. And then after those 3 business days, the agreement is in effect and it is legally binding and can be upheld in court or through a state complaint. The due process hearing really provides a very detailed record. As I mentioned, a court reporter would transcribe this, what happens throughout the hearing, and parties are entitled to a free copy of that transcription following the hearing. And so really being able to look back and see, now what did the judge say here? What did the testimony say? When did this evidence come into play? Sometimes that can be very helpful in kind of understanding how the administrative law judge formed the conclusion that he or she did. And lastly, expedited due process. Expedited due process is very unique in that it is available to address disputes regarding disciplinary matters. So this would be challenging manifestation determinations or disciplinary removals and change in placements because of disciplinary removals. This happens, when this occurs, when someone submits a due process complaint regarding a disciplinary matter, we expedite it. This is because in these situations, we are really looking at, the child possibly, the change in placement, possibly being placed in an inappropriate setting or not receiving the services that the child needs. And so things need to move very quickly. In an expedited due process, the hearing must occur within 20 days, and then the judge has 10 days from that hearing to issue a decision. So that is much quicker than when we're thinking of a state complaint, that's a 60-day timeline. So in matters like that helps really speed things along. Oops. And then my last slide here is just, these are live links. These are some resources that are available on the 3 different dispute resolution options. I've also included links to our model forms. So those are forms that can be used to request any of these options, but please know that use of the model form is not required. And with that, I will pass it off to Karen.
Right, I am going to start talking. Hopefully you can hear me. I know you can't see me yet because I'm not pinned yet.
We will fix that, Karen, but we can hear you.
Yep, that is no problem. So while they're working on that, I'm going to go ahead just so we can keep moving. So, and I have melded my slide deck so that we could keep moving seamlessly as well. So I am Karen Thompson with Ask Resource Center. Ask stands for Access for Special Kids. I'm the executive director at Ask. I'm also a self-advocate, a person with dyslexia, and I have 2 kids who are blessed with abilities to learn differently. So now that they're young adults, I've worked a good amount of my way through being the parent of 2 kids with disabilities and working within various different systems to help them along. They do a great job of that on their own now. Today, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the history, just briefly, of Ask, so you can understand how we came to be, the 4 main services that we provide, and the best way to request services to work with Ask. So moving on to the next slide. Ask Resource Center is a family-focused nonprofit organization. Our mission is to empower people with disabilities, their family members, and the professionals who support them. And we do that through various different types of services that I'm going to talk about shortly. What you're looking at here on this slide, the little bubbles, are the values that we operate within, which are set by our board of directors, who are also family members and people with disabilities. At some other point, if you're interested, I'd be happy to deeply dive with you into the values and how they were written and what they mean. But I think what's important to hopefully jump off the screen for you here is these are the things that when families are empowered and able to have the information and bring a confident self with them to the table, they're able to work more clearly and positively alongside the professionals to be able to reach the best outcomes for their children. And that's what Ask is about. Moving to the next slide. So some parents bumped into each other in public places with their kids with them and identified with each other back a long time ago in the late 80s, early 90s. They were able to identify with each other as people who are family members and caregivers of kids with disabilities. They developed a support group to begin to support other like families, and in 1997 became a nonprofit organization. And then in 1998 was when Ask applied for its first federal grant. Under that federal grant, it remains an organization that is outside of systems and run and led by families. And what we mean by that is our staff members and our board must be majority family members, caregivers, or people with disabilities themselves. At Ask, almost everyone on staff is, and our board hovers right around 80% people with lived experience with disabilities. Of the staff members who might not have a diagnosis themselves or care for a child with a diagnosis, they are people with backgrounds in it and usually extensive and high-level degrees, and bring that level of support to the organization. For example, people who are prepared educators, special educators, people with backgrounds in social work, and so on. So we've been around doing the types of services and supports that we're doing more of now for a long time. For instance, in 2023, we provided 38,000 instances of family support. And what I mean by that is the one-on-one support and the training support. If I were to add in the things that we do that are remote and online, that number would increase significantly. But let's just focus on family support and training. So we have a number of federal projects. The first one, the Parent Training and Information Center, or what's known as the PTI, has been around. That's the grant that we have held since 1998. And the work that we're doing today is still the work of a PTI. It is much more coordinated. It is defined systemically in terms of the individual support that we do. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But in general, it is the same type of work that a Parent Training and Information Center does. Many of you have heard of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Many of you know that IDEA has a Part C that's for early childhood and a Part B that is for school-aged kids. There are other parts to IDEA as well, including a Part D. And under Part D rests the authority for parent training and information centers. So there is at least one in every state, and some states have more than one. And so that's where our original funding came from. And it was the first grant that we received. It does not pass through the state. It never has. PTIs must be in a community-based organization run and led by families, sitting outside the system and collaborating with the system. The next federal grant that we received was the Family to Family Health Information Center, or what's known as the F2F. It is like a PTI, but it's in the healthcare world and run by the U.S. Health and Human Services under HRSA, Health Resources Services Administration. Again, it's not a state pass-through. We answer directly to the federal government for the F2F, and we have a federal project officer. The third federal program is the Rehabilitative Services Administration. Flip those two words around there. The Rehabilitative Services Administration, PTI. It is the newest of our federal projects. Again, one that rests outside the system, is not a state flow through. And it is very much like what the Parent Training and Information Center provides, except it's a very small portion of dollars specific to youth and young adult leadership and transition supports. We're also the Family Voices state affiliate and the Parent to Parent USA state affiliate for Iowa. And those are affiliate accreditations, similar to what you might think of as a Better Business Bureau certification, specifically in the realms of family support and peer-to-peer mentorship. So we've had a long history of doing the work that we do. Move to the next slide, please. But now our work has scaled up quite a bit due to the contract and the collaboration with the Iowa Department of Education. So under that contract, we are scaling our services across the state, adding staff in each of the AEA areas in order to support the work. and also a line of coordinators who support specific components of the content. To learn more about that, we just completed 2 webinars at Ask, and you can certainly go to our YouTube channel and watch those. You'll meet the staff and you'll learn a lot more about how the services work. What you're looking at here, where the stars are, is where our staff are currently located. And we have 5 more staff to bring on, so there will be more stars being added as we go. Moving to the next slide. So I talked about our main services. I call them our buckets of work. So you'll hear me talk about the buckets. Those are individual assistance, training, mentoring, and information dissemination. And we're going to quickly go into each of those. On the other side of this slide, you see some popular products. They're not all of our products and services, but some of the popular things that parents engage with us the most on. One is post-secondary transition, so I'll touch on that for you briefly later. The Together We Can conference is a one-day conference run and led by families, always held the first Saturday in May. Ask Each Other support groups, where families run and lead the support group with staff members there to help guide the conversation, but we let you network with each other and come up with answers together. And then we also have robust dispute resolution supports and trainings. Inside individual assistance, we support families, we can support youth and young adults, and we can also support the professionals who support the families and the youth and young adults. In these little bubbles, you can see some of the types of questions that families bring to us. And then, of course, you can also come to us with a need for individual assistance if you're having difficulty with a provider or a school or a system and you're wanting support with professional advocacy. All of our advocates are extensively trained in mediation tactics, in active listening, and in the laws and the guidelines and the protocols that exist in Iowa and federally around education, healthcare, and all of the things that those encompass when you're dealing with a child with a disability. They are not attorneys, so they will help you understand, they will help you move through the emotions, and they will help you understand your options. We will also help you move through the options that you choose, but we are not attorneys, so we will not interpret law or represent you in legal proceedings. Moving to the next slide. We serve the whole child. As I mentioned all of our other programs before, everyone at Ask is cross-trained across each of the different projects that we have at Ask. So when you call in to receive support from Family Support or one of the content coordinators, we won't move you from person to person if the issue that you're calling us for maybe is partially about education, but also partially about Medicaid or a waiver or something related to a need for a medical support. Each person that works with you is able to handle the entire issue that you contact us for. Moving along. Another thing about Ask, the information that we receive from you in individual cases is confidential, and it's also anonymous, to use the same language that Dr. Guy was using. We took extensive opportunities to have conversations with the department about what types of data would be shared back and forth. So certainly under our federal grants, information is confidential. If we're working with you under the Family Support Services at Ask, in relationship to the contract with the Department of Education, we will share aggregate data information with them so that they can rest assured we're doing our work, but we will not share direct case information. We might share trends. We might share, this seems to be popping up here or there, but we do not share trends we do not share personal identifiers about any family or family case. Now, there may come a time when we might ask you, would you like to fill out a release for us to be able to have a conversation if we think that might help relieve whatever issue is occurring. We also have done that with the AEAs in the past. If a family is not comfortable with that and there isn't a release signed, that isn't something that we do. Next slide. So our trainings can be offered in all sorts of different formats. We would love to be invited to your area and to your service if you would like to utilize us in person. We also have virtual trainings, a webinar series, events and exhibit fairs. And then we can come to you and provide webinars for you as well. Next slide. The easiest way to find out all of the different information about the events that we are putting on is to go to the events tab of our website. And you can see here what you're looking at is the August 5th virtual support group. You will start to see support groups popping up in person around the state next year as well. Once our family support staff are well trained and ready to go doing excellent at their individual assistance support, we will be moving them into doing training and support groups in their areas as well. That's a great place to find all of the opportunities that are available through Ask. If something is available through another organization and we've been invited to it, what we would share with you is the information directly from that invitation. Our mentoring bucket is partners with families in like circumstances as a support system. So you might think that's similar to our family support staff, and it sort of is, but they're volunteers. So move to the next slide, please. So you can get kind of a sense from the Venn diagram here that our employees, again, they're paid staff, they're extensively trained, they do research. We are supervising them as they go. They fill out very extensive data so that we can make sure a case is being handled well. And mentors are volunteers. There is a little bit of overlap and you can see it there. Next slide. Information dissemination is the next bucket. So we do have extensive resources on our 2 websites. If you miss one of our webinar trainings, we have a YouTube channel that we post all of those on. We have a bi-weekly, so every other week, e-news, and a number of different social media sites that you can interact with us on. So let's go to the next slide. Here you can see the way to get to the articles and the information sheets that we have available on the resources tab of the website. So that's the dark blue tab at the top. Once you're at the resource library, there are different ways that you can search information. You could use the How Can We Help search function, which is just like the search function on any other website, but you'd have to know the jargon of the thing that you're looking for. So let's say you want to look up manifestation determination, but you don't know that word. That search bar might not be the easiest place to go. So there's a dual search bar in the library as well. The first side of the bar has a drop down that includes health, education, law, Spanish resources, and information about our webinars. Then once you've reached that spot, there's also a second bar. So in this case, you can see somebody has clicked on health. That brings up every resource we have in the topic of health. But then you can click on a subcategory. And maybe you're looking for health in an educational setting, health in a healthcare setting, health in regard to mental wellness and brain health, or Medicaid. So you can drill down to what you're really looking for on the site. Next slide. Like I mentioned, our webinars, if you miss one, they are on our YouTube channel for you, and you can see the YouTube channel handle URL there for you. Next slide. To sign up for the newsletter, in the footer of every page of the website is the newsletter sign up opportunity. You simply type in your full name and your email address and hit submit. We won't spam you. We won't sell your information. You'll get 2 e-newses from us a month. They contain a lot of information about Ask and a lot of information about many of our partners. So if you're a partner entity who would like us to share something, please send it to us. We will put it in the newsletter if we can make it fit. If not, it will at least go out on our social media. Anytime you want to unsubscribe, it's a quick click of a button to do that. All of our social media can be reached and connected with at the top of our website. We engage in Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and then again, you can reach our YouTube channel from the top of our website. TransitionIowa.org is a second website that we manage the content of. And so if you have a transitioning youth, that might be a great place for you to visit. It operates very much like the Ask website, and the search bar for it in its resources category works the same way as well. What you're seeing there is an interactive map. If you click on the green buttons, up will pop transition checklists and items that are useful for families and youth as they work through the transition process. Referrals to Ask can be done by emailing our info account or calling us and leaving a voice message, but the most effective way to reach us is to use the Contact Us tab on the website. When you click on Contact Us, go to the next slide. What will come up is a page that has an opportunity to click a button to a Spanish version of the same page at the top. And below that is the English information. You can use the drop-down menu to request family support, to request a training or attendance at exhibit fairs, or to request to reach, be matched with, or become a mentor. When you click into the item that you want, you will go into a form that is elaborate enough that we have a good sense of what you need and how we can help you. It has skip logic, and it's specific to the person who's filling it out, whether it's a youth, a family member, or a professional. It goes into a confidential database behind the scenes, and you can also upload documents like IEPs or health reports there if you would like to. From there, we will contact you back. As soon as you submit the form, you will receive a welcome letter in your email. It looks like this if you've asked for individual assistance, and then there's a different welcome letter for trainings, exhibit fairs, and mentors. This helps you get a little bit of information prepared, look through a couple of things that might help you formulate what your questions are for when we give you a contact back. I'd be interested in learning how you plan to use what you've learned from us today, so feel free to scan the survey. It takes about 1 to 3 minutes to give us information back on that. And also, in that survey is an opportunity to leave us information about resources you would like us to produce, trainings that you would like to see from Ask. And our last slide is just a quick bit of information about where our central office is. Coming here, though, will not get you further up on the list of individual cases. That's a list that is first come, first serve. And because almost every family that's on it is in crisis and needs our support as quickly as possible, we don't jump lines on the list. So this is where our bricks and mortar are, but most of us are out and about across the state every day.
Well, thanks, Karen and the Department of Ed team. We are a little bit over time now, so I think we're going to go ahead and withhold questions until the end. But go ahead and please use the Q&A thing that's on the bottom of the screen, and you can put your questions in there. And if we do not get to them at the end of the presentation today, we will take those questions and get those answers back to you. We're now going to turn it over to Zach, the Division Administrator from the Aging and Disability Services. I just need to make sure we get him pinned and get his presentation up, which I may need your help with that, Emily. Oh, there you're pinned. All right. And I think Emily's running your slide for you, Zach.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Zach Ryan, Director of Aging and Disability Services for Iowa Health and Human Services. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the programs that we have available for students with disabilities or people with disabilities across the state of Iowa, available through HHS. So I'm going to go through these programs as they are organized through our agency, first from the Aging and Disability Services Division, which is the division that I administer. We have some programs available through public health, family protection and well-being, and Medicaid. And then I will go through these fairly quickly because I want people to have an opportunity to ask questions, not only of me, but of the other presenters. So we'll start with Aging and Disability Services, and you can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. The first program I want to talk about is the Autism Support Program. And the Autism Support Program provides funding for children under 14 who don't qualify for ABA coverage through Medicaid or private insurance and who meet specific diagnostic and financial criteria. So ABA is Applied Behavioral Analysis, which is a heavily research-based method where we look at environmental factors that affect behavior. And this program is really shown to improve social and communication skills and reducing behaviors that are harmful or that affect learning. One thing I want to point out about this program is the financial criteria are pretty high. This program actually allows people to qualify for services up to, I believe it's 500% of the federal poverty guidelines, which is about $150,000 for a family of 4. This program does only pay for services that are ABA. Other types of services or therapies for children with autism may be funded by Medicaid or other private insurers. There's an email address here, autismsupport@hhs.iowa.gov. And as with most of the programs I'm going to talk about, I will go through a really high-level overview. So I am going to provide contact information for all of them. So there's that email address, and also the program director's name is Megan Abramsky, and her email is provided here as well. Next slide, please. So the next thing I want to talk about is a plan that we have for disability access points. This is something that we currently have an RFP out for. Our planned launch for this program is July of 2025. And the idea is to provide really high quality service navigation. What we hear a lot, not only in Iowa, but across the country for families and individuals with disabilities who are seeking services, it is a web that is incredibly difficult to navigate, to the point even where people who work in this field can have trouble navigating the resources. So this plan is to set up disability access points across 7 districts in the state so that we have full state coverage. And those access points will have experts who can provide information and referral to services, a service that we call options counseling, which is person-centered planning. So we can have an individual sit down with people, with families, with individuals with disabilities of all ages, and figure out what are your goals and what can we do to help provide you with pathways to achieve those goals. And also these disability access points will provide application assistance, not only to HHS funded programs like Medicaid, but to HHS adjacent programs as well. And you've heard some, like with the Ask Resource Center, there's a lot of service navigation activities going on there, as well as with Department on Ed. And we really look forward to working with our partners going forward with this initiative to create a no wrong door system for Iowa, where regardless of which part of the system you enter, you end up getting the services that you need. Next slide, please. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the services provided through Public Health Division of HHS. The first is a program called ITABS, and ITABS provides consultation to stakeholders who are providing services to individuals. The goal here is that we really provide collaboration with various agencies to look at uses of applied behavioral analysis when current plans are not really working. Small group trainings on topics of value to stakeholders, and also just other requests when there's a difficult situation where individuals aren't making the progress that we want to see them make. The contact for this program is Susan Smith, and her email is listed there. Next slide, please. So our next program through Public Health is our Brain Injury Services program. And again, this has a lot to do with service navigation and individual support, providing needed information, services and supports. They also provide training for service providers, and they provide information about how to best work with individuals with a brain injury. Next slide. So the next division that has programs for individuals with disabilities at HHS is our Family Protection and Wellbeing Division. So the first program I want to talk about within Family Wellbeing and Protection is the Iowa Family Support Network. And I believe that Karen talked a little bit about IDEA Part C earlier, or made reference to it. This is our IDEA Part C program. It includes a statewide directory of resources, events, national information, and early childhood research. Next slide, please. So our Children at Home program helps families who are raising children with disabilities by providing services and support that are really geared toward keeping their child at home and promoting integration into school and community. It's a program that serves individuals 21 and under who meet the definition of a developmental disability and also meet certain income guidelines. And it provides services such as funding for equipment, respite, supplies, assistive technology, and some other disability-related expenses. And the goal really is to provide assistance that's not covered by other programs when that assistance is geared towards helping children live more independently and stay included in their communities. Next slide, please. Early Access is Iowa's early intervention program for infants and toddlers under 3 who are not developing as expected or who have a medical condition that causes delays or may cause delays. And this program helps parents and caregivers support their child's development during everyday activities. And one thing I want to point out here is that anyone, including parents, relatives, doctors, child care providers, can refer a child to Early Access. However, if you are not a family member, we ask that you please make sure you have the family's permission before making a referral. Next, we have a child care resource and referral. And we encourage anybody who has children with special needs to call and speak with a parent specialist to discuss child care options in your area. We know that it can be especially difficult for parents who have children with special needs or disabilities to find child care. So a parent specialist can talk with you about what the individual needs are of your child and help search our database to see if there are eligible programs that might be able to serve you. Next slide, please. So we also have child care assistance, where we are able to pay child care providers an increased child care assistance rate for eligible families when they're serving children with a special need, when there's a description of the needs. And those needs include adaptive equipment, more careful supervision, or special staff training that's necessary to provide child care to that child or to those children. Next slide, please. And so next up is Medicaid. And Medicaid is by far the biggest funder at HHS of services for individuals with disabilities, of course, through our managed care organizations. But the important thing I want to point out here is that if you have a child with a disability, you can request case management through your MCO. And we find a lot of families who are not aware of that and who aren't getting case management who could be. So if your child is enrolled in Medicaid, we encourage you to ask for case management. Next slide, please. We also, of course, fund LTSS, or long-term services and supports for kids, through PMICs, which are psychiatric medical institutions, skilled nursing facilities, intermediate care facilities, or ICFIDs. And let's go on to the next slides, because while those are appropriate for a lot of cases and a lot of individuals, the HCBS waivers are one of the focuses now for our agency, which really allow children and individuals to remain living independently in the community, which is our goal. So of those HCBS waivers, we have our child's mental health waiver, which identifies services and supports not available through other mental health programs. And they're services that can be used together with traditional services to create a comprehensive support system for children with serious emotional disturbances. Next slide, please. We also have our Medicaid for kids with special needs, which helps pay medical bills for children with special needs due to a disability, for children under the age of 19 who have a disability that meets the standards of the Social Security Administration and also are income eligible. And for this program, income eligibility, the family income can't be more than 300% of the federal poverty level for the family size. The EPSDT program or Early Periodic Screening, Diagnosis, and Treatment is a program for children to receive preventative healthcare services, including oral health services. And the purpose here is to find and treat health problems before they become serious. And EPSD covers Medicaid eligible children aged birth through 20 years at no charge. Next slide, please. And that is a very high overview of programs funded by HHS to support children with disabilities.
Thank you so much for that, Zach. We're now going to turn over to Stephanie with Disability Rights Iowa to talk a little bit about their services that they offer, and we'll get you pinned here in a second, Stephanie. And again, we'll put any questions you have in the Q&A, and we'll also hopefully have some time at the end too.
Like she said, my name is Stephanie Smith. I'm a staff attorney with Disability Rights Iowa, and I am going to be talking about the special education advocacy and representation that DRI can offer. Next slide. A little bit about Disability Rights Iowa. We are Iowa's designated protection and advocacy agency. There is a P&A in every state and territory in the US. They're usually named Disability Rights and then the state's name. Some are named a little bit different. DRI is funded wholly through congressional grants, so federal money. So that means that we are a nonprofit law firm and we don't rely on attorney's fees or clients to fund our work. So that means if you reach out to us and we provide you services, you will never get a bill from us. Because we have congressional grants, we're a little limited in the type of work that we can do. So we have areas of focus that all of our work has to fall into. You can find more information about our areas of focus on our website. But these are the 3 areas that typically our education cases fall into. The first one is challenging behaviors. This is the bulk of the special education work that DRI does will fall into this area. These are students whose disabilities manifest as challenging behaviors that cause them to be excluded from school through suspensions, expulsions, being restrained or secluded, having their school days shortened, or being referred to the juvenile justice system. The next one is community integration. This one's a little less common that we see, but a case will be classified under this when there's an issue with the least restrictive environment that a student's being educated in. Typically, we'll see cases regarding self-contained classrooms, homebound placement, PMICs, or in interim alternative settings when those settings may not be appropriate for the student. Finally, we have right to access government services and programs. These cases will typically involve inclusion issues for a student to participate in extracurricular or non-academic activities. When you reach out to DRI, this is kind of the process that individual representation goes through. Not on this slide is the intake process that you'll go through. So they'll make sure that your issue falls into an area of focus, and also that our advocates and attorneys have capacity to take on more cases. But once you get through the intake process, your file lands with one of our attorneys or advocates. They'll start by interviewing you, usually over the phone, just to get an idea of the circumstances that have led you to reach out to DRI. We'll ask a bunch of questions and kind of talk through the issues. As we're talking, we're working on to identify potential issues and violations that can help us get started of what we might be looking for. Because the next step is we will request records from the school, from the AEA. We may also ask for records from medical providers, therapists, or any evaluations that your student has received. We'll go through these records pretty carefully and pull out any legal violations we may see, and anything that maybe doesn't quite rise to the level of a legal violation, but nonetheless, we want to provide you some information and education. And then we'll reach out again and discuss what your options are, what your rights are, and some strategies to move forward. Next slide. These are sort of the categories of remedies that DRI typically pursues. The first being that we would attend IEP meetings or manifestation determination review meetings with you. will either attend in person or virtually. Most of them are done virtually these days. We represent or we service the entire state of Iowa. So if we can attend virtually, it saves agency resources. Examples of things that we would attend IEP or MDR meetings for would be to try to get reintegration plans in place, make changes to the sports and services, either advocate for or advocate against placement in different settings, or try to work out compensatory education for maybe some past issues. The next level is due process or state complaint that Rachel talked about. The remedies we may include or we may try to seek through those methods would be staff training, compensatory education. In a due process complaint, we may ask for attorney's fees from the school or the AEA. We will discuss creating or changing policies. And in some cases, we can talk about systemic changes that not only benefit your student, but can help benefit other students down the road. We can also pursue those remedies through informal means. Typically, that looks like me negotiating with the school's attorney to resolve those issues. It may be quicker and can sometimes preserve the relationship with the school. Next two buckets are less common for us to pursue, and I'll get into reasons for that. But the first one would be a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights that sits under the U.S. Department of Education. They enforce Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and Title II of the ADA. They're a federal office. There's also the Iowa Civil Rights Commission that's responsible for enforcing the Iowa Civil Rights Act, which does include a provision against discrimination on the basis of disability in an educational setting. There is very little case law for using the Iowa Civil Rights Act in an educational setting. It's typically more often used for employment or housing. So for that reason, it's not a common method we'll use to pursue, but it is common. The last one is the Department of Justice. The U.S. Department of Justice has, in the last 5 or 6 years, become more interested in investigating the use of restraint and seclusion in schools. And they look at it as a violation of Section 504 and the ADA, just like the Office of Civil Rights does. Their remedies result in district-wide settlements that are very robust. They can be dozens of pages long. However, their timeline to get to those settlements is very long. I think the quickest I've seen is a year, up to 2 years sometimes, and our clients can't always wait that long. And that's the same reason why an OCR complaint, Office of Civil Rights, or the Iowa Civil Rights Commission may also not be the option that we go with, because both of those processes are also very long. Next slide. So some patterns that we see in our cases are kind of all listed out here. This is primarily the issues that we will address if a case comes to us. So these include unaddressed behavior issues, and those unaddressed behavior issues tend to lead to the rest of the squares on the screen here. So that includes restraint and seclusion, suspensions, both formal and informal. Informal means that you've been asked to pick up your student early from school, or you're asked to just keep them home for the next day. But it's not documented or reported as a suspension. Those are still effectively a suspension. We're also seeing an increase in referrals to juvenile courts, and especially for younger and younger students, when their behaviors manifest in a way that may technically violate the criminal code, but they're so young, or it's a manifestation of disability that really should be handled in the school setting. Again, alternate or inappropriate placements in restrictive environments, like we talked about before. Using seclusion rooms for instruction. We've seen an increase in that, so that when a student becomes dysregulated, seclusion can just begin right away. The problem with that being that the student is then expected to learn in the same setting that they're being secluded in. Sometimes there's trauma, which would make learning in the same setting that the trauma occurred a little difficult. Shortened school day is another common one. School day being shortened, not for medical needs of the student, but due to behaviors. We have also seen forced homebound or virtual instruction as the only thing that a school is offering when a student's behaviors have kind of escalated, and the school feels uncomfortable having them on campus. And then again, the discrimination in extracurricular activities, band, choir, sports, different clubs, things like that. Next slide. So over the next few years, DRI is working to shift to do more systemic work, which means that our individual representation might have to look a little different. We're doing that so that we can try to have a larger impact for people with disabilities and students with disabilities in particular. In special education, those projects will look at the patterns that we just talked about on the last slide. And look at how those are occurring across the state. We are still at the very early stages of the shift and planning, but some of the what some of these projects may look like would be state or federal complaints, reports that we issue based on data and observations that we have, litigation, educational outreach to school districts or policymakers, and then policy work up at the legislature itself. So even if DRI can't take your case in the next few years, it still helps us to know, it still helps us to have you reach out to us and to our intake team. So we know what the patterns are in the community and we can keep up to date on the best way that we can help.
Thanks so much for that, Stephanie. Appreciate that. And we hopefully will have time for questions. But again, I can't stress enough, put your questions in the Q&A so we can get back to people. We're now going to turn it over to one of our family advocates that's on our Disability Council. Who's going to talk a little bit about what her experience has been advocating for her daughter in the school system. And it looks like, Charlene, you're already spotlighted.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I'm glad to be here, everyone. And I just want to say, I see you, parents and caregivers out there, with your time that you are giving tonight. You are making that journey to gain more knowledge to support your child. So kudos to you. And I am with you and understand why you are here tonight. And so, a little bit of background about myself. I'm in the Waverly Shell Rock School District. I'm on the school board here. I currently serve as president, and I recently joined the IDDC as a family advocate on behalf of our daughter, who is 15. She's a freshman in high school, and she would be at a level 3 learning, has very high needs when it comes to her learning needs. Also, she has physical disabilities as well as has medical fragility. And so it's a complex situation that we're dealing with and has been for a very, very long time. And so even though I did say I was on the school board, it doesn't necessarily mean our special education process is smooth sailing. And so we continue to navigate that world. Tonight's meeting very much feels like an IEP meeting because, right, we have all these experts around us, but I am here to tell you that you as the parent are also an expert and also an equal member of the team when it comes to your child and the decisions that are being made. And one of the best things that you can do is to read your procedural safeguards and to understand what are your rights so that you have the facts in front of you, because we all know that we are talking about our own child and that this is in a very emotionally charged, potentially, situation. And so you carry that along with what you want to happen for your child. So know these facts and have those with you, so that you can talk in that language of facts versus, the situations can easily escalate to, again, showing a lot of emotion, which is not bad. I mean, everyone, I assume positive intent in all conversations that we have with our child and with the educators that we're sitting with. I want to believe that in everyone, and I think we should give that to everyone as well. However, again, going back to, you are the expert on your child, so you need to trust your intuition. It is early detection and intervention that is so critical when it comes to that education journey. And so trust yourself and trust that you need to ask more questions and that you need to ask for more data to support what's being shown to you, and ask to see the data. Again, that is your right, and you are an equal member of the team. Something else that we have learned, always get everything documented in writing. It is great when you have an administrator or you have a teacher or an AEA consultant who shares, yes, I agree with you, or we should be doing that. Document that, email that, show what was said in a meeting. Ask if you want to record the meeting, so that you can go back and listen to it. Everyone should be okay with that, because it's, again, the facts that are being shared with each other, and that you want to have that, again, in written documentation so that you can go back and review it. And if you need to, show what was said or agreed upon. Another part of this is that we have found, again, with our daughter, is every child is so different. And especially in special education, we've had conversations where someone says, oh, I've taught so-and-so, so I understand what it's going to be like with your daughter. No, you do not. So we have to help give perspective. And in one way that we did that, again, in a respectful manner, is our daughter has some vision difficulties. And so we actually got a pair of goggles and put some dots in them and said, this is what our daughter's seeing, and had everyone at the table put those on and say, okay, now how do we accomplish this goal that we've set? But now she has these challenges. And it was literally eye-opening for a lot of people to understand, wow, I wasn't thinking of that. I wasn't putting that into that plan that we were trying to build there. So trying to build that perspective and help them bring to that. And it can be hard, because you can have players at the table who unfortunately say, no, I got this, I understand. But again, you are the expert for your child, and you can bring that and help bring that perspective. Another thing that we found that can be very helpful is having a partner or an advocate with you during your meetings. Before the AEA had family partners, now that resource is at Ask. I would definitely encourage you to reach out, and if you need someone to bring to come into the situation to maybe just change the dynamics a little bit, keep things more calm, focused on your child, I definitely recommend having that extra person, or maybe it's just another seasoned family peer who's gone through this path before, to have them at the table with you so they can help, again, bring focus to your child and what you're trying to accomplish at that meeting. Staying professional, growing your knowledge, building that peer support, using resources. Sometimes we're going to have to make that decision not to watch another Friends, rerun episode at night, but we are going to have to go back to the procedural safeguards and read that. That's just our journey. And part of that is we need to accept that, so we can have these conversations and, again, show up with facts about what our children need and have rights for. And then just, you are on a path for advocacy. You are now becoming an advocate for your child. And that is a very important role model that you are demonstrating for your child, because ultimately, I think Karen brought it up too. She was from Ask Resources that she was a role model for her children, and now her children are going on to advocate for themselves. So what you are demonstrating is going to create such a great ability for them to go out and get the resources that they need as well. So I know we're running a little short on time, so I'll just end it with that. But I just want to say congratulations to all of you for being here and for keep looking for opportunities like this to become more knowledgeable and to keep advocating for your child. And I would also encourage you, this is my advocacy shirt. You can get those with the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council. Ray Gunn helps make those. So wear those to your meeting. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Charlene, for that plug there. I appreciate it. We do love our This Year Advocacy shirt. So yes, if you don't have one, feel free to get one. Well, geez, that's just a lot of information in an hour and a half. So thanks everybody for sticking with us on that. We do have a few minutes for questions if somebody wants to raise their hand and come off mute. I do need to let you know that we are losing both of our interpreters at 7 o'clock. So we will, excuse me, have to come to a stop at 7, but we do have a few minutes for questions. Oh, and Emily did put in for everybody the chat, the link in the chat. I think everybody can see that. Oh, I don't know if we can see raised hands, Emily. I don't know if we have that ability. If we have anybody.
The chat is disabled.
Yeah, I'm just surprised we don't have anybody with raised hands.
Can you enable the chat?
Emily, can you do that? I can maybe do
Yeah,
that.
do you want chat or just through the Q&A?
Oh, we do have a question in the Q&A. Oh, Barb answered that already.
No, Barb messed it up. So I was just gonna type thank you for that. So I don't know if anybody else wants to answer. It was a comment from Carol on how much information, that wonderful information for a grandma to review and understand.
Well, thanks for that. Well, I'm not seeing any hands raised. And the chat, I think, has been added if everybody had one to put a question in the chat, but I don't see any hands raised.
I think there is a question or two in the chat now.
Oh, is there? Okay. Oh, yes, I should let folks know that we are going to send out the recording and we'll make the PowerPoints available for everybody. And then if we do have a polling question after this too, so if there's any additional questions, we will get the answers to that too.
Can I ask a quick question?
I think we have one in the chat we
Can you
need
hear
to answer first.
Sure, I think I can take
Okay.
just a bit of a stab on the question that's in the chat around all this information that's new for teachers, parents, administrators. How are we being kept informed on this? There are a couple of things that we are beginning to roll out. First of all, and Angelisa may talk about this, our regional special ed directors ensure closer contact with folks across the state. Our communications folks are working on a big rollout. We are ready to, just about ready to launch the family portal in Achieve, which will be the first system in the country that provides parents immediate access, if they choose, immediate access to their educational IEP, special education records, including real-time progress monitoring as it gets added. We started last month, at the end of the month, a new series of webinars called Policy to Practice that are open. It's an open link. The first one is posted, first recording was on exiting. One data point is not enough. And that recording and materials are posted on our special education state guidance webpage. and we continue to learn and listen and reach out. So if you have ideas for us, please reach out to me or to Angelisa. We are happy to get the message out as much as we can.
And I apologize, I didn't see who came off mute and wanted to ask a question.
But that was me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So here was my question. So we're a nonprofit that has an office 7th Locust in Des Moines, but we work across the country to facilitate more awareness of special needs resources. We actually work with autism, ALS, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy to enable more access to travel. This may be more of a question, not really sure where to go with it, but one of the things that we would love some advice on, so we're the sole resource for TSA.gov for these communities to document the resources around the country, how we can engage more with the communities represented on this call to make people aware of these free resources. We've met with a number of the stakeholders represented on this call. Okay, thank you. For the stakeholders represented on this call, apologies, I'm just getting on off an Uber. So, like how can we get more awareness facilitated for the stakeholders represented on this call? Everything is free. And we believe travel is the key to open up opportunities for education, going off to, if REACH isn't the right program, University of Iowa is an example, getting more money or whatever it is from across the country. But a lot of these students don't even think travel is accessible to them for vocational opportunities across the country, remote work. Any thoughts on that amongst the people on this call?
Any thoughts, anyone? Jonathan, why don't you feel free to send to me the information that you'd like distributed, and we can see what we can do about that, about the services that you provide.
Okay, and we will do that. I mean, we're working with Governor Reynolds and a number of stakeholders in the state on connections between stakeholders that are underemployed in our communities and those industries that may have labor shortages. But we think there are opportunities on the travel side, and as I said, there are so many people we're learning from in the state. So if there's any opportunity, maybe I can, if somebody has a particular email address they want me to send this to, I'd love to. Everything we do is free, and the goal is to help more people with resources. We're a parent of a special needs child. We're trying to enable more access. In the state, we'd love guidance counselors in the state and otherwise to be able to advise our, the students in our state and the like about this.
Sure, I will put my email address in the chat for you.
Thank you.
Did we get all the questions answered then that were in the chat?
I think the chat's covered, but there is one in the Q&A.
Oh, yep. Do you want to take that one, Barb?
Sure. And the question for those of you who might not have it available is that the question is for our state folks. With so many changes occurring in the state, what are some opportunities we're seeing in the future for service delivery here in Iowa? And I think what I'm going to do, Maggie, is tie this to Pam's question about effective delivery of professional development to school staff. And then Angelisa, if there's anything you want to add as you have been working with the regional special ed directors, I'll open it up to you. So one of the things we have been working on in the state for quite some time, and really in partnership with the AEAs, was delivering professional support and learning packages around early literacy and now secondary transition for effective specially designed instruction. And the package we know is really effective. We've demonstrated it's effective when it's done with fidelity, and teachers have somebody there who can coach and provide questions, which is can be a strain statewide to ensure consistency and to make sure that the folks who are providing the coaching and professional learning have the knowledge and supports to do that with fidelity. And this new system, I think that's one of the service delivery options we have, is we can get into more classrooms, and we can ensure that what each teacher is getting for support is delivered with fidelity and has ongoing coaching support instead of the more traditional one-time sit and get approach. There's just one idea that then affects service delivery. And we're at 7. Oh, Brooke, you're on mute.
Sorry, you're right. We are on 7 and we will lose our interpreters. So again, as we're closing out here today, thanks for all of our speakers today for all the great information that you guys have shared with us. We will send out the recording and the PowerPoints that were used today. I think there is a poll question when you end today to see what other questions you may have, and then we can get back to you. But again, thanks for joining us this evening, everyone, and have a good rest of your evening.